Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by Total Soccer Show Employee of the Month runner-up Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
It was too nice. It started off too nice. I knew it was going to turn at some point. It turned very quickly. Hello, Daryl.
Do you know who won?
I'm going to assume you.
Nope, Coffee Machine.
Coffee Machine.
Verismo. Verismo
right.
is Employee of the Month.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah?
I'll give it to you. Yeah.
So
that means you weren't even in the running?
No, not this month. I'm sort of like in the pantheon. I'm not allowed to win it.
And if we're going to go with like the corporate analogy, so Coffee Maker gets like a $20 Starbucks card and I get a $5 Chick-fil-A card?
I filled it with new pods today.
See, there we go. Yeah, perfect. It used it wisely.
And I get to answer 6 listener questions.
All by yourself?
Well, you're going to help me.
Okay.
You're going to help me.
All
That's
right.
why you're Employee of the Month runner-up. Okay.
I'm going to put that on my resume.
We do have, I dare you. We do have 6 listener questions to answer today. All really good questions. I'm really excited. Please get us started, Taylor Rockwell. See if you can beat the Verismo.
I shall do my best. First question comes from Julie Nishimura Jensen. Hi, Julie. She asks, I know what dribbling is. That's good. That's more of a statement than a question. But I don't get the dribbling stat. What does it mean when they talk about completing X number of dribbles in a game? Thanks.
So I did the research. I went to Opta's website and they actually have an event description for what they term dribbles/take-ons. So I think if you're looking at like whoscored.com, they report it as dribbles. If you look at the StatZone app, for example, they report it as take-ons. To Opta, the stats people, that is interchangeable. And what they say is it's essentially when you run at someone, if you go past them with the ball, that's a successful dribble/take-on. If you don't, it's unsuccessful. So you'll see this reported as like a fraction. You'll see it as like 3 for 5, which means you attempted to go past someone 5 times, and 3 times you went to the other side of that person with the ball. And 2 times you did not. But you'll also see it reported as straight up just a number, like say it's 4. That just means 4 successful dribbles. It does not say if that's 4 for 4 and you're a genius, or it's 4 for 100 and you're real wasteful.
But I do get why it's kind of confusing because,
of course.
You know, as we've talked about, I coach 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. The first skill we teach them is dribbling. So if you learn dribbling as just dribbling the ball, and suddenly you see like, what? Like Leo Messi only had 6 dribbles? Like I saw him touch the ball way more than that. That doesn't make sense.
So the key differentiator is going past an opponent with the ball, right? Because you can dribble in open space. I mean, almost anyone can do that pretty comfortably under no pressure. Right?
And so I think
I've seen some people run out of bounds, but
a couple times. But I think to your earlier point that it's probably better just to say if you hear like, oh, he dribbled past somebody, you could switch that with like a take on, and then maybe that helps make it a little bit more clear.
That makes more sense, I think.
So we'll go with take ons.
All right, and I went and did some research.
Okay,
I found out who the top dribblers are in Europe, just in terms of number of dribbles completed or take ons completed. Like total completed, not percentage-wise.
Just attempted.
Successful take-ons per game. Total take-ons per game that are successful.
Because I bet I can guess who is the least successful.
I didn't
the most attempted.
I didn't look who that was. I've got the top 4 for you, so I'd love for you to guess who you think is number 1 in terms of most successful dribbles per game.
I'm going to say Mohamed Salah. Why not?
It is not.
Okay.
It's Neymar.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Neymar with an average of 7.3 successful take-ons per game, which is a lot. It also says a lot about how he's playing.
Yeah, I was going to say, in retrospect, it makes sense because Salah, it's a lot of like running past people, beating people to the ball. Neymar, we consistently see him stop and stand people up and then try to dribble around them. So that does not surprise
I don't
me.
have his sort of success rate, but his willingness to try a lot is impressive. You looking at my sheet of paper?
I love that you wrote it tiny and then covered it up with your hand. I have no idea. It's chicken scratch.
Can you see who's number 2?
No.
Lionel Messi.
Lionel
Messi with an average of 5.4 per game. 3rd place is Eden Hazard, 5 successful dribbles per game. 4th place is, the surprise to me, Wilfried Zaha.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, that surprises me. But when you think
it's more
about it,
because he plays for a lower level team, right?
Yeah, but he takes people on.
He certainly
he's the
does.
Only one who can.
He is not afraid. Can you guess where Pulisic comes in the top 20? Say, I can tell you he's in the top 20.
He is in the top 20. That's actually surprising to me right there. I would not have guessed that.
16th.
All right.
Christian Pulisic is 16th in dribbles per game, successfully completed dribbles per game
That's
in all
really
of the big European leagues.
Because we talked to, I think I talked, I'll put it on me. I talked a little bit earlier in the week about how I wanted to see more like actual production from him. We had a few people tweet that he actually is a leader in terms of like chances created or playing a role in chances created. That's also very interesting
accidental assists. So that's right.
Also that, or getting shoved off the ball if today is any indicator. But that's interesting to hear that he is also taking people on. It shows that level of confidence that he's playing with.
His average was, I believe, I don't have this number in front of me, but I think it was 2.4 per game. Which still isn't bad. It's more than I manage.
Do you have to adjust that for inflation between the euro and the dollar?
Yes, you
do. Cool.
That's
how it works, right?
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. Okay. Up next, we have a question from Marcus Smith.
We do.
Marcus wants to know. Okay, so he says the CONCACAF Champions League competition.
Yeah, we got to stop phrasing it as a question when the initial part is a statement.
Marcus says,
the
CONCACAF Champions League competition is the next major step for Major League Soccer to prove that it's advanced in the region as a league. I agree. With the level of importance in the competition, why is it not being widely broadcasted? My Spanish is so-so, but I would prefer an English language broadcast only. So should we maybe explain the current situation and try and then work out how we got there?
Sure. So right now, do you want you mean the entire competition or just the broadcast?
Just who is broadcasting these games right now?
Right now, no one. When it comes to the English language aspect, Go90, which is Verizon's streaming app, has acquired the English language streaming rights.
It's not on the televisions in
Nope,
English.
it is not. It is not. So in terms of English language, that is the only option you have, and then occasionally that's just going to be a blank screen because that app is inconsistent, is how I'm going to put it.
That's fair to say. And then in Spanish, Univision has the rights. But for example, last night, I was in the office trying to DVR the FC Dallas game. It wasn't even live. It was on Galavision, which is I think Univision's like maybe not premium channel. And it was on tape delay.
Yeah.
So, and I think it was streamed on their website, but again, there were some problems there as well. So the broadcast situation is not great.
No.
Marcus's question then is, why?
Sure.
Why is the CONCACAF Champions League not sort of on Fox or somewhere where we can all watch it?
I think I've got a couple ideas. I think the first one is that the majority of people I genuinely think in the United States who support soccer don't really know what it is. I mean, they get the idea of it if you say to them there is a CONCACAF Champions League, but the format changes.
They're like, does Leo Messi play in that?
Yeah, and so I think people don't know what it is, so you've really got like diehards and like local fans watching their team. And so you're not going to get as many advertising opportunities as a result because you don't have a mass audience. You've got the kind of built-in audience that you already have, and there's not a lot being done to promote it. On top of that, you don't often get Major League Soccer teams winning it. It's been a while. And even it's kind
ultimately so far a very depressing competition for Major League Soccer fans, therefore for American fans. Therefore, it's not something to broadcast if you're feeling celebratory, right?
Yeah.
It's like, do you want the rights to watch Dallas lose away in Mexico?
Yeah, but it would be the equivalent of like.
And by the way, I'm aware they did not play Mexico last night, but I'm thinking back to last season with Pachuca.
I'm trying to think like it would be the equivalent to me of like a Ukrainian team in the Champions League. Like you have Shakhtar Donetsk, they've made the knockout round, but they're probably not going to go much further in the tournament.
That's on TV over there.
It is, but I guess what I'm saying is, but like once they're out, I would imagine viewership drops just a little bit because you don't have the Ukrainian team in there, and that's still talking about the best competition, I would say, club competition-wise in the world.
I see.
And so then you go to CONCACAF, and I think once you have the MLS teams get knocked out, there's even less interest from an American perspective because there's no American clubs to watch anymore. There's already, I think, a little bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to Liga MX versus MLS. So I think it just isn't going to be that broadly appealing to a large soccer viewing audience.
Or to a network to buy, right?
There you go.
For that very reason. I think that's true. Yeah. I think the other reason is that it's CONCACAF selling the rights. It's worth remembering that just because Major League Soccer teams are in it, Major League Soccer is not selling the rights. Soccer United Marketing, the much maligned Soccer United Marketing, actually is quite good at getting things on television, right? Like one of the deals they negotiated was if you're going to buy the rights to US national team games, you're also going to buy MLS rights as a package. They made that happen originally. They're not involved at all because it's CONCACAF. And CONCACAF, somewhat famously, are not brilliant at selling TV rights. And that's why it was sold to Go90 streaming app in English language in the United States. I would... I may offend... I'm guessing maybe someone who works for CONCACAF listens. I don't know. I'm just going to say that maybe their sales department is not that great. And they might be better off getting something like Soccer United Marketing to step in and do this for them.
I mean, it's possible because at least you get more of a direct push. And then if you can get, say, new U.S. Soccer President Carlos Cordeiro involved, maybe there's a little bit more of a centralized push to get better rights, better access, more people interested. Maybe then Major League Soccer throws a little bit of money, U.S. Soccer throws a little bit more money. Suddenly there's more interest, there's more sustained progress and achievement in that tournament, and then there's more interest overall.
I'm going to put you on the spot. What channel would you like to see the CONCACAF Champions League on?
On it, probably ESPN, I think, because ESPN does a good job, I would say, overall with their soccer coverage, but they've lost a fair amount of it. So to have another competition, but they're also very good with their streaming, at least in my experience. And so I think it would be good to have like one match a week, but then you can stream all the other ones. They tend to be very good with that sort of endeavor.
I was going to go CBS primetime.
Oh yeah,
get it on there. It can be the the Big Bang Theory can be the lead in,
I was going to say
there's CONCACAF Champions League.
Sure, that's what they're going for.
Straight after. We'll accidentally get increased viewership just from people who forgot to switch over.
I wonder how many phone calls they would get from people or handwritten letters from people saying, "What is this?"
CBS would lose some ad revenue. I think.
You think?
As well. It is worth saying that. So this year, for the first year, CONCACAF has taken steps to try and make the CONCACAF Champions League more appealing, right? There's no longer going to be the weird 3-team group stage that is quite hard to sell. It is straight to the round of 16 knockouts, right? So theoretically, this thing should be more saleable, if that's a word. Sellable going forward. But it it hasn't happened this year.
It is Thursday afternoon. We are coming to the end of the week.
But do you get what I'm saying? They're taking steps to make it more appealing.
Theoretically. But the problem then is that the tournament, not through CONCACAF's fault, but the tournament coincides with Major League Soccer preseason. And so at least with the group stages, you had more opportunities because now, say, FC Dallas went away, lost last night. We'll hear about that when we get to scouting. But now if they don't get that result, they're done. And it is sort of like you don't have that group stage to make up a little bit. It really is like, oh, nope, you're out of it already.
Yep, one and done.
But at least you got some preseason action. That's good.
All right, well, thank you to Marcus for that question. We have our first advertiser today is somewhat CONCACAF themed, or at least we've made it CONCACAF themed.
Yeah.
Today's first sponsor is Roughneck Scarves. They are the official providers of scarves for US Soccer, Major League Soccer, USL, NCAA, Total Soccer Show, and if you're doing it right, they will officially provide you with a scarf at roughneckscarves.com.
All right. I don't think that makes them your official scarf provider.
If you say it is, you can say
I guess if it's the only scarf you own, then they've supplied 100%.
You have to give away all your other scarves and just have a Roughneck Scarves scarf.
But they do the custom scarf option, so we asked on Twitter if our listeners could, or I guess our Twitter followers, could design a Roughneck scarf to represent the 2018 CONCACAF Champions League, what would it look like?
I enjoyed asking this question because I didn't know what was coming.
And the answer was sarcasm.
Here are four responses. All the responses were funny. Matt Schlemmer says his CONCACAF Champions League scarf would be Liga MX on one side and Liga MX on the other side.
Doogie Meister, interesting, says a list of Liga MX champions on one side. See, it's a recurring theme. Liga MX champions on one side and a Go 90 app error screen on the other. So just black on one side, basically? Yeah.
What is... probably not, sorry, we cannot play this video this time. What are Go 90 doing? Because I feel like, didn't they have a US national team?
A bad job?
Game? Yeah. And the stream failed as well. I feel like if you've committed to streaming something, it's basically you had one job, stream it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that implies that they have committed, and maybe they haven't fully committed to streaming it, and that's part of the problem too.
Maybe all they prepared was the app error screen, and they just thought it'd be cheaper to just
but they made it
say
look
we're
great.
doing it. Yeah.
They made it look great.
The best app error screen in the business. Patrick Keeler says for him, his CONCACAF Champions League scarf would be a blank TV on one side. Oh, we're really on theme here, aren't we? And a Google search for Champions League with all UEFA results on the other.
Yeah, that is accurate.
Okay, side question. Was it a smart thing to name it the Champions League when really the UEFA Champions League has that lock, stock and barrel?
No.
I don't think it is. It would be like if when Major League Soccer launched, they called it the American Premier League. It would feel odd, I think.
It would. My guess is that there are so many other competitions throughout history that it's difficult to find one that hasn't already been used elsewhere.
Yeah.
So if you just kind of co-brand it, maybe there was an idea of like, that's the easiest way for people to understand what this is.
I guess.
It's the CONCACAF Champions League.
But it's like calling the Gold Cup the CONCACAF World Cup.
I mean, no, it would be called. No, it would be more so like calling it the CONCACAF Euros, which is the CONCACAF European Championships. Perfect.
That'd be very confusing.
And finally, Keith Olson, invisible because no one outside our bubble knows it exists. Thank you, Keith, for proving my point.
I will say, Keith, if you want to buy an invisible scarf, Don't go through Roughneck Scarves. Go through us. We will sell you an invisible scarf.
We'll sell you a whole invisible wardrobe.
Shipping is free as well on the invisible scarf.
That said, if you chose to actually buy a Roughneck Scarf, you could use the discount code TotalSoccerShow, all one word, all uppercase, for 20% off at roughneckscarves.com.
Thank you to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's episode and many episodes previous. One of our longest running sponsors, Roughneck Scarves.
They sure are. All right, Daryl Grove. Another question for you comes from Joe Martella. I just read a short article, says Joe, that enumerated the differences between the EFL Cup and the FA Cup because Joe didn't realize they were different. So his question is, since they're so similar, why are there two anyway?
It is interesting, right, that there are two domestic cup competitions in England. The big difference is that it's two different organisations. So the FA Cup is run by the Football Association. It's the oldest sort of trophy.
Continuously operating cup competition in the world.
There we go. The League Cup really is the Football League Cup. And so the Football League controls the Championship, League One and League Two, and the League Cup. And the way it worked is, so FA Cup goes back to the 1800s, right? Around about the 1960s. I think 1960 was the first year of the League Cup.
Can I interject to say the answer to this is floodlights, and that's all you need to know?
Don't spoil it. I was just getting there. So yeah, essentially, think of it this way as well. The FA Cup is in the schedule for English football. In the league, what am I saying? League schedule is suspended certain weeks for FA Cup weeks, right? When you think of FA Cup games, unless they're a replay, they're on Saturdays and Sundays. They're weekend games in the schedule.
Yep. Whenever you see the schedule and it's like there are no games this weekend and it's not an international break, just know that means it's the FA Cup.
Exactly. When floodlights became a thing, the football leagues thought, clubs could make more money if we had some extra games in midweek. Let's invent the Football League Cup, and it's open to all the Football League teams, and they can play Tuesday night, Wednesday night under their nice new floodlights starting in 1960. So essentially it was new schedule times. What am I trying to say? New fixtures became available to schedule games because of the floodlights, and they filled it with the Football League Cup. Yeah,
and so then, the key point there would be that FA Cup is every club in England.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
and then League Cup is just those top four divisions: League Two, League One.
You've got to be a Football League
Championship,
team.
Premier League. And then I think in terms of the question that always then gets asked is why don't people care about it as much? And the answer is for a variety of reasons. One of the big ones, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we've talked about this before. It's something absurd where the prize money for winning the League Cup, the Carabao Cup this year is only I don't even think it's $1 million. It's a very minimal amount of money compared to the FA Cup, which itself is not that much money compared to winning the Premier League or finishing 2 places higher in the table. That gets you several $1 million more. So there are many other competitions that award you much more money and have much more interest.
And honestly, it just has less prestige, right? The FA Cup has the history and the prestige. Winning the league is winning the league. The Champions League is the Champions League. It's all the best teams from around Europe. Football League Cup has always been the kind of second string cup to win. That said, best of luck to Arsenal and Manchester City, because it's this weekend, right? February 25th, I believe, is the League Cup final at Wembley.
Yes. Yeah, and it is. It'll
feature in our thumbs up, thumbs down, but we're not going to do a whole review of that game, I don't think, right?
No, it's telling that the Cup final is in February because it really is basically okay, we're not a summer blockbuster. We can't compete with the summer blockbusters. We'll release this movie in February. That's kind of what it is.
And I'll say this for the EFL Cup, as it's now called, the Football League Cup, the Carabao Cup, if you want to sponsor it. They have adapted with the times. There used to be 2 legs, for example, and they quickly realised, this is not popular when there's a lot more congestion in the schedule. So they went, all right, we'll just do single elimination game. And then they cut back on the number of replays and all that sort of stuff. So they really have streamlined as much as possible, and they let Arsenal field a youth team without really going after them or complaining too much. So they've not fought and upset people by trying to pretend to be more important than they are.
Yeah,
they being the mysterious people that run the Football League Cup.
Carabao,
yeah.
All right, next question.
Oh yeah, it's from Adam Ulrich. Adam wants to know. This is good. Now that the US Soccer Federation presidential election is over and Carlos Cordeiro has won. Which campaign promises will it be easiest for Carlos Cordeiro to keep, and which will be the most difficult?
Sure.
I guess we should each give an answer for most easy and most difficult.
I'll go ahead and take that one and say the one that's already happening will probably be the one that's easiest to make happen. Because in his campaign, the campaign materials, he talked about how they were going to have like the new like technical director division almost. Where
technical department.
Technical department with like GMs similar to athletic directors. And then it was announced like within minutes of him being elected president, like, oh yeah, they're doing that. That's already going to happen.
Yeah, I think it was part of the annual general meeting even before the election. So that one's too easy because it was already happening.
But doesn't it feel kind of strange that feels like something that was already in the works that people weren't talking about until the election was over? Like, I'm not trying to go down the conspiracy route or anything like that, but it is odd that this huge campaign promise is something that was very much already going to be happening and nobody was really talking about.
It's kind of just clever on Carlos Cordeiro.
I mean, I think a lot of other people were kind of promoting this idea too, so it feels like maybe something that all the candidates might have known was happening and just chose to not talk about publicly.
It's a little bit like running for office. Say you're running for president. I'm not going to name any names, so I don't want to make this specifically political because we don't need those emails. But if you just project out what the economic growth is going to be, and then you just promise that under my presidency we will have this percentage of GDP growth. Right? You just say what's going to happen.
And so with that, I'll say I think the other easy things for him to achieve would be, number one, he stressed in his interview with Grant Wall that in the first 100 days, his priority was going to be winning the World Cup bid for 2026, given that I don't think has much to do with it. I mean, obviously he has some to do with it.
He's got to wait till June 13th.
Yeah, but it's basically waiting until, like, Sunugalati is continuing to lead that one. I'm sure Carlos Cordeiro will be involved as the new president of U.S. Soccer and probably previously was.
I think you're right. That is the easiest one.
But he's not going to be doing very much. It's not like he's going to be out there really campaigning.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was interesting that yesterday Sepp Blatter chose to come out of Twitter retirement to endorse the Morocco bid.
Yes.
I felt like that was a little bit like, thanks, Sepp. Kind of helping us out there when you, person accused of corruption, is like publicly backing a different World Cup bid. I'm cool with that.
Anything else that's easy for him to get done? I've got one here. So,
I would say my only other one. Do you mind if I keep going, or would you like to jump in? I don't want to steal them all. I would say one of the other ones he prioritized was increasing the role of former players in U.S. soccer leadership. Given some of the talk we've had about who might take over some of those GM spots, I think that's very likely. And I think overall,
that one's tougher if he has to create new positions, multiple new positions for them, or spots on the board and this and that.
It is. It always comes down to, again, going the political route. What exactly are you talking about there? Like, basically, if he calls up, I don't know, Kyle Martino and says, like, hey, how you doing? Like, technically, he is involving former players in his administration.
Or if he's like, I've created a job here called the Kyle Martino role, and I think you'd be perfect for it, Kyle.
Well, just anybody. I mean, like, it just depends on if it's, like, because he could easily say, I've spoken to hundreds of former players since I've been elected. That doesn't necessarily mean he's creating positions, but it means theoretically he's involving them more. So I think any position or any...
We want this to be an honest version of what he's promised, right? We want him to fulfill these things honestly.
I mean, we would like that. That's not the question, though. It's basically, it's like, what are the promises that are the easiest for him to keep? Talking to a bunch of former athletes and getting their opinions on how it needs to be fixed is technically involving former athletes.
Okay. I'm trying to not be as cynical. Here's one from me.
You know the world we live in, right?
I do. I just like to pretend it's better than it is. One thing he promised was to create the position that's a paid director of diversity and inclusion to promote equality within US soccer. That, to me, that's just one position. You could easily create that position. It's not so hard to find the funding to get a full-time salary for one person. Find that person. That's a thing that I think would be very good. It would look very good publicly. It would be fulfilling a promise, and it would be a very useful thing that we definitely need. I think that's one that's easy and necessary.
See, I don't disagree that it's a position we need and it's necessary. Where I would disagree with you is that it is a position that if you are a newly elected politician, it is a potential minefield. That if he appoints a man instead of a woman, are people going to be upset about that? If he appoints a minority who doesn't represent an underserved area, is that a problem? Like, I think there are potential problems there that might make him be hesitant to really pursue that position right away. I feel like.
So you think he'll put it on the back burner and kind of not do it?
I think
it seems obvious to me to go after that and make that happen, and then you can be like, I created this position and filled it, and here we are.
Again, that's theoretically the way it could work. But if you're Carlos Cordeiro, who we know isn't very fond of public speaking and maybe doesn't want to rock the boat too much too soon, I think you're right. It's a position that needs to be filled. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a diversity hiring task force created to then hire that position. And I think that's probably I'm expecting that's the way he's going to reign over U.S. soccer or just govern over U.S. soccer, is by appointing other people to then fill positions so that it takes a little bit of heat off of him, but it's also not him directly having to do all of these things.
Okay, before we get to what would be the hardest, I've got a sort of a follow-up question.
Sure.
Are you at all concerned that it's been, nearly 2 weeks since he was elected and basically nothing has happened? Or is that too much to expect for there to be sort of... Did we expect him to be in the office on Monday, being sort of like, all right, here's what we're doing. Let's get this, and this. Like,
It's not too much to ask, but no, I'm not surprised.
Okay.
I think because he was never running, like, again, he tried to not run as he didn't want to be seen as the establishment candidate, but he certainly wasn't running as like the outsider, the way, say, Eric Winalda and Kyle Martino were. So I think when you're the outsider, you kind of have to take that, like, not necessarily but you have to take a dramatic approach when you first take office. You've got to really make some public declarations that are going to ring out. And I think if you're running as sort of like, well, things are bad, or things aren't great, but they're not terrible. Like, with that mentality, you're not going to then be like, and thus we're changing everything. Right. But like, he is going to, go ahead with the idea of like, oh yeah, we're already looking into creating these positions. We're going to keep doing that. Like, it's going to be not necessarily status quo. It's going to be moving forward, I would say, but not very publicly with very like glitz and glamour.
So if this is still the same after like 3 months or so, I'm going to start being a bit suspicious about how much change is actually coming.
Correct.
Just saying. All right. So with that in mind, what are the hardest things that Carlos Cordeiro has promised? What are the hardest things for him to fulfill?
I mean, we've had to negotiate some contracts and deal with things like that. I would say he's prioritized equal pay for the men's and women's sides of the game. I imagine that will be difficult because you've got a lot of contracts you're going to have to deal with. There's a lot of legalese. There's also a lot of bad blood that you're going to have to try to deal with, specifically looking at the women's side of the game and how you make equal pay a possibility.
Okay.
I think that will be something that he tackles, but it will be a long process to make happen.
Anything else? I've got a couple here.
What you got? Go ahead. I've talked a lot.
One of the promises he made was to unify the youth soccer landscape.
Oh, that's
which,
easy.
To be fair, is what all candidates said they would do. They would take, the AYSO and all the other various youth organisations and kind of get them all on the same page. Everybody talked about that, but nobody really had a firm idea for exactly how, like a mechanism to make that happen. It felt a little bit just like... do you remember the famous, I am going to get deliberately political then, do you remember the famous Obama line during the 2008 presidential election of there's not a red United States of America, there's not a blue, there's a red, there's a United States of America?
That was the Democratic National Convention in 2006.
Yes, but it also, 2004, but it also became part of his sort of campaign speech, right?
Yeah.
There's not a red America, there's not a blue America, there's a United States of America.
We got some friends in the red states, we got some friends in the blue states.
Right, but that isn't what, I mean, even a generous reading of Obama's presidency, which again, don't want to get into judging that, but you could argue that is not what happened, right?
How so?
We did not. Red and blue did not unite.
I think so. We're all united. And
instead,
totally
Mitch McConnell
great.
just got in a staring contest with him for years and years. So what I'm saying is, it's very easy to say that sort of stuff about unification, but it's very, very hard to make it happen. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's going to be a tough one and an important one. The other one I have.
I still feel bad for correcting you about the national convention. I apologize.
Well, I feel bad because you were wrong. Right?
Yeah.
So the other thing he talked about was growing commercial revenues. And it was kind of a big promise from Cordeiro that he would grow commercial revenues, that he would improve the amount of money coming in to US soccer. And he said that very confidently in his very Goldman Sachs-y type way. Yeah, I know how to do this. That's the thing that we can judge easily, right? At some point, we'll see the balance sheet of how much commercial revenue has come in. And we'll know, did you do this or did you not do this?
Will we, though?
Yeah, they have to report every year, and you see how much commercial revenue there was.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a financial report.
What I'm saying is I don't know.
You can't just add a zero and be like, yep, I did that.
No, but you can gauge, I would say oftentimes correctly, the level of interest that you expect to receive. And if it's an election year and if Sunu Gulati isn't running or you just had a major tournament, people are going to maybe be a little bit more inclined to look at those returns and figure out what exactly is happening, how are they growing. I don't know, because I can honestly say I've never really looked at the U.S. soccer budget outside of when they suddenly had a $100 million surplus or whatever.
Oh, I have. It's always available every year, so you can see.
So do you look every year, really?
Not every year, but I know that I have done, and you can do.
Okay,
is what I'm saying. So, and then just so we're not really talking about whether people will care that he's growing commercial revenue or what. I'm saying that's a thing that he promised, and I actually think it might be quite hard to do. Unless
why do you think it'll be hard?
Because I don't think he had some deals lined up already, right? It wasn't as if like, hey, if I win, then. Nike, you're going to inject another $100 billion into US soccer, right? He didn't. I don't think he had a big deal like that lined up. He's going to have to go out there, talk to people, make some phone calls, try and do some commercial activity happen.
I mean, or be Ed Woodward and sign a Southeast Asian noodle partner. I mean, it is that level of like, or you just get more sponsorships to increase the amount of money coming in.
But we'll see if he can actually do that. Because part of the thing is, we don't know how valuable US soccer is, right? We don't know if Sunil Gulati and Kathy Carter at Soccer United Marketing, if they actually were maximising the revenue of US soccer. We could be that they absolutely were, and it's not worth any more than we've brought in.
Yeah.
Or we could find out that that really we've undersold for a few years, and Carlos Cordeiro will bring in way more revenue. So it's one I'm really interested to keep an eye on.
Yeah, as am I. I think, but like overall, like when you look at Adam's question, I would say part of the reason like why there isn't one huge thing is because Carlos Cordeiro is U.S. Soccer president, and I'd say he's U.S. Soccer president because he ran a smart campaign. He appealed to the people he needed to appeal to.
He didn't say pro-rel tomorrow.
That's the big thing, is that he avoided with pro-rel. He had the out, which is technically a correct out, like legally speaking, that he couldn't comment on it because there's an active lawsuit. Yeah. So he didn't really have to commit one way or the other with pro-rel, and as a result, that's not something that he is now committed to. Whereas Eric Winalda, say, if he had won, that's a thing that people are going to be looking at and waiting for him to really start working on.
Yeah, people would have been asking that question every day. Yeah. What have you done for pro-rel lately? Every single day.
And so I think Cordeiro said enough and made enough public declarations that there's stuff that we can track to see if things are moving forward, but there is no huge thing that we're going to have to wait and see what happens outside of improving the game and qualifying for the next World Cup.
Well, I think we can guarantee that we will keep talking about it, and we'll keep an eye on what Carlos Cordeiro, because you really can look at carlosforsoccer.com, click on his aim higher, my ideas, my platform, and you can really go through the checklist and ask, has he done that? Has he not done that? And again, like my thing of him hiring the director of diversity inclusion, I take your point that that's hard to do for various reasons, but at the end of the day, or at the end of the year, say, he either has done that or he has not done that. You know what I'm saying? And we'll be able to judge you have or you have not. Check or X.
Yeah, check or X. There we go.
Today's show is also sponsored by Fucci, another long-time Total Soccer Show sponsor. Fucci. Fucci is the soccer rebounder. Yeah. It's getting warm again in Richmond. Did I introduce yesterday's show as a man who's enjoying springtime in February?
You did.
Unseasonably warm. It's Fucci weather. We could put Fucci together, go outside and play it right now.
And it was nice to remember what warm weather in Virginia means, because in the winter, it's just cold. And you can handle the coldness. When it's 80 degrees and that humidity comes out where you can see the air, which is what it was today for me.
Yeah.
You're reminded how hot it gets.
But it is prime time for a bit of Fucci now, right? Because it's not the 100-degree scorching heat that we foolishly did play in and still enjoyed ourselves, but got a bit of something.
I think the best way to do it is to do it in 100 degrees around noon where the sun is beating down on you, surrounded by concrete.
With a limited supply of water.
Concrete and blacktop. It's just the best for dying of heat stroke.
But if we're going to go springtime, plenty of water, we're going to enjoy some Fucci. I think it's worth having a Fucci refresher and remembering the things that we learned from all the Fucci we played last summer. Because, it started out really hard. There's that original video where we can barely hit the net. We get much, much better as we go. So give me the biggest...
We get better.
We got better, yeah. Give me your top tip for playing Fucci first.
I'd say stay on your toes. That's the biggest one. Because one thing that I remember it took us both a while to adjust to is having another person staying in the square with you. Like, if you're playing with a bunch of people, the idea is you hit the ball and you get out of the way so the next person
go to the back of the line, kind of.
But much like racquetball or squash, like, you're in the same space, and so it can be a little bit tricky to navigate. Like, Daryl just hit it in the net, and he is justified in standing where he is because he just got to the ball. But now he's blocking half the net, so I've got to try to play the ball around him and adjust my body accordingly. And so you got to be up on your toes and ready to react.
So you got to plot your course.
Yeah.
So the big
Daryl
thing
cheats is, I guess, what I'm getting at.
You can't prove that. The big thing I learned is it's the same as like when you're sort of, I'm not much of a striker, right? So when I'm in on goal, I'm always tempted to hit it as hard as I can.
That's a very good one.
With Fucci, I'm always tempted to hit it as hard as I can because in my head it's like, I'm going to make sure, right? And then you've got to make sure to not hit it too hard because otherwise it is wildly out of control and it can go over, under, wide, or just completely off target.
I would say very often when my arrogance / hubris gets the best of me and I think I've got you beaten, Daryl dove, he just barely kept that one, it hit the net, I've got this one, and I celebrate by hitting the ball as hard as I can, forgetting that it has to legally bounce in the square. So I'll hit it and it goes 15 yards out of bounds, and then I'm like, I just gave you that point. So there is an element of controlled volley is key.
Controlled volley. So not too hard, but also not too soft, because sometimes it doesn't get there.
I mean, Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Yes, you got a Goldilocks fix that Fucci game.
Indeed.
If you would like to...
I couldn't really remember who learned that lesson, so I let you answer it, because I think she ends up getting eaten or chased off.
Yeah, that won't happen if you buy a Fucci. You'll just get to play Fucci.
Yeah, no bear attacks.
No bears not included.
Yeah.
So if you go to playfucci.com, the link will be in the show notes. You can get 15% off a Fucci rebounder with the discount code TSS2018. TSS2018, TSS2018. I've definitely said it 3 times, so you have no excuse for not remembering it. Thank you to Fucci for sponsoring today's show.
And thank you to Trent Larson for asking our next question. Trent says, I am a fan of the San Jose Earthquakes and have been for some time. My question is, no one seemed to care when the Earthquakes got moved to Houston, so why should I care if a team's owner wants to take his team elsewhere? Can't Columbus just start a new crew like the Earthquakes did? Is there no one with deep pockets in Ohio that wants to pony up for a Major League Soccer franchise? I guess ultimately, why should I care this time around? We're going to pause a moment for everyone in Columbus to stop screaming and smashing things. Just going to wait a minute. Daryl, would you like to answer?
I mean, yeah, so we've had various versions of this question.
Oh, still smashing.
Asked at us.
Now they're done. Okay.
On Twitter and via email. So we thought it was definitely time to sort of address this on the show. There are similarities between the San Jose move to Houston, because fans did not necessarily want that to happen, and the Columbus Crew potential, we hope not, save the crew, move to Austin. But there are also differences and reasons that Trent should care. Fair to say?
Yeah.
All right, that's me laying out the basics of what I'm about to try and describe. Okay.
Have at it.
So in 2005, to give everyone a refresher, 2005, San Jose Earthquakes, the franchise was essentially put on hiatus, they sort of called it, and moved to Houston. They took all the players with them, coach, changed their logo and everything. All the history stayed with San Jose, but the actual team...
It's a key point there. Yep.
Went to Houston, right? Then 2 years later, San Jose started up again. San Jose Earthquakes re-entered the league as sort of an expansion franchise. I believe they had to pay the expansion fee.
I think it was a pre-approved expansion fee that was probably lower than
it was like $10 million from what I read. It may have been 15 or so, but it wasn't the $150 million that someone in Columbus would have to pay right now.
Or more than 150 now.
Right, yeah. But the big difference for me is that in 2005, Major League Soccer was not in as healthy a state as it is right now. Right, so 2005, the San Jose team genuinely could not find a stadium, right? They were playing against San Jose State University. They had tried for years and years and years to try and find a stadium deal. It just was not happening, and it made sense for the survival of the league and the survival of this franchise to move to Houston.
Because there's a good 442 article kind of comparing the two teams and the two situations.
Oh, really? I didn't know this.
And with San Jose, to your point, that they had a home stadium, theoretically, but it was a university.
They were just renting it from the university, right?
And with that comes they're not getting any money from parking or concessions, so you're not getting any of the match day revenue that other teams throughout the league are getting. So that's a problem. And I believe at the time that ownership group was looking for a new publicly funded stadium, which was never going to happen. So then you're looking at private investment that's much more difficult to sell, whereas other cities around the country were more inclined. Houston, I think the fourth largest city or fourth largest market. Could be wrong on that one, but at least at the time, that's what I saw reported. So suddenly, if you're a struggling league, a team that's struggling to make money, you can't really afford for another team to go under, especially not one that I think like at the time was the reigning champion or had won like 2 years before. You kind of got to make some moves.
And the final sort of...
at least that's what the ownership would argue. I'm not sure I would agree.
And the ownership was the Anschutz Entertainment Group. So it's one of those original MLS investors who at some point owned multiple teams, right? Which is not the scenario MLS ever wanted.
I think like at one point they had some percentage interest in 5 different teams, something like that.
So, but the end result with San Jose is that a couple of years later, they're back with new ownership group. Lou Wolf, I believe, the former Oakland A's owner, is the owner. They ended up opening a Via Stadium, I think fully privately funded because of Lou Wolf. Like, San Jose Earthquakes are in a much better situation now because of the needed move that happened for MLS to survive and for this franchise to kind of get a refresh. And then, in contrast, that's not the same situation in Columbus Crew.
It's not, because first of all, when San Jose left to go to Houston, like Don Garber basically said, like, we are leaving the door open for a new franchise here. It didn't work in this one situation. We needed to get it sorted. But I think within a year, or maybe just a little bit over a year, they already had they already had the ownership group looking for like public land, or land to purchase to build that stadium. They had already kind of had plans moving, and as you said, they kept all the history. So it was always like, yes, we're getting rid of them for now. We're regrouping. You will be back. It's roughly the equivalent of LAFC, I would say, where we're going to give you a hiatus period. Obviously, Chivas didn't move to another city, but it was sort of like take some time off, get things together, come back in, we'll make it work.
Yeah. And then the other major thing is...
I'm not sure San Jose fans would agree with that feeling.
No, I'm sure San Jose fans were mad at the time, but they have a much... Even though they got 2 years of no soccer, it might have been 3 years, they're in a much better situation now, and the league survived, right? Yep. So that's the other big thing, is Major League Soccer is much healthier. Despite the US not qualifying for the World Cup, seems to cast a shadow over it. MLS is in a much better situation now with massive, massive expansion fees. Here's the key point for me is the Bay Area is a very... So San Jose, Bay Area, San Francisco, very wealthy... area of the United States. It can easily support, not easily support, but it's a location that sports teams want to be in, right? Columbus Crew, well, but no, part of the problem, literally...
No, sorry. The face I was making, dear listeners, I just made a weird face, and it's because I still have a weird issue with San Jose being called the Earthquakes, because it seems odd to me to name a team, but the face came about because I was like, it's just so weird to name a team after a natural disaster. That would be like calling the Chicago Fire. And then it kind of was like, oh, okay, yeah, they do that. They do that sometimes.
So, by contrast, Columbus Crew, part of the thing is there is not one of the MLS originals anymore. There's a new owner, Anthony Precourt, who's in Columbus, and he's basically saying... He's essentially saying this city is not big enough, it's not the right market. I want to just take the soccer team out of it and put it in a market I think will be more successful. With Major League Soccer's approval, that's Major League Soccer saying that Columbus is a city we don't want, right? And that, to me, is a huge part of the problem, is that MLS is essentially saying that the owners and the league can pick and choose which cities are, in quotation marks, worthy of a Major League Soccer franchise. I'm saying San Jose or San Francisco or the Bay Area would have eventually got another Major League Soccer team no matter what. Columbus Crew may not, despite the fact that soccer works perfectly fine there right now.
Yes. I mean, I think if you wanted to take the devil's advocate approach, you would say that there's declining attendance, or has been, that they're not making nearly as much money as he would say there is, that the stadium isn't in an ideal location. There are parallels again. I wouldn't necessarily agree with those.
Those are all Anthony Precourt arguments.
And that's
that
the thing,
are not
is
correct.
And then I would say that, like, I don't know what the San Jose one would have been. It would have just been like, yes, because it's like, yes, we don't have this, yes, we don't have that. Anthony Precourt's is like, yes, but. It's like, you do have a stadium, yes, but it's not where we want it. It's not pretty enough. It doesn't have amenities.
3 miles from downtown is his problem? I mean, you could walk from downtown to the stadium.
No, I think it is actually farther. Like, I think it does take a decent amount of time driving. I think we've heard about that before, that it is like kind of a pain to get to at times, especially at rush hour, especially when they schedule games during the week. From what I read, it was built as a bare bones. It was the first soccer-specific stadium, but it was very bare bones as a result, so you don't have the luxury suites and as many concessions and restaurant options. There's nothing around it, so you don't have like the lucrative ways to make money off of the stadium that he would like. Again, that shouldn't be the end-all be-all of a franchise.
And these are problems he could try and fix in Columbus rather than just uproot the whole thing and move to Texas.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that it feels like he has gone through the motions to say, like, well, I tried. Like, I've tried to get publicly financed land that I didn't have to pay for in the heart of downtown, where I could build a stadium on the cheap with tax credits. What's the problem? Like, it's a very disingenuous approach.
So what this comes down to me is, as well as MLS, Major League Soccer being in a much better financial situation now, and therefore they don't need to make these weird moves to survive, like you could argue they did in 2005.
Yeah.
Also, 2005, San Jose had insurmountable at the time problems. Columbus Crew just has a bunch of minor complaints from the owner.
Yeah.
Right? That, to me, that's the key difference. It's real big obstacles versus minor complaints that Precourt seems to want to use as an excuse to remove a team and put it somewhere else.
Yeah, and it feels like he either bought the club expecting to move them, or bought the club expecting like Columbus to quadruple in size in 5 years or something. like it is the sort of like bane of the existence of owning a small market club, is that like you're not going to be able to sell out a 50,000 seat stadium. It's just not going to happen. And it just feels like he felt like that was what it should have been, and because it's not, he's frustrated as a result.
I think Ohio State do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's slightly different. You don't have 30,000 people actively on your campus at any one time.
Plus alumni, right?
Yes.
So we've
probably even more than that, but yeah.
We've kind of lined up the sort of the differences between the San Jose 2005 situation and the Columbus Crew 2018 situation. To Trent's question, why should he care this time around? So I think we've explained why the situations are not identical, but why should Trent, the San Jose fan, care about the Columbus Crew?
I mean, because I think this sets a precedent that really, like the San Jose one, I don't mean to offend fans. I don't want to upset people, but like it was a necessary move. If you want to go that route, I would say the league would argue it was a necessary move at the time to prolong the life of Major League Soccer. Now, this is not a necessary move. I mean, yes, you could argue maybe you make more money in Austin, maybe you can build a new stadium, whatever. Those are all theoretical arguments, but they're not essential arguments. And I think that's the difference for me, is that once you let one club move from one place to the other, basically because the owner wants it to be in a place where he can make more money.
You get the opening scene of basketball.
Yeah, kind of. And I think, like, I really, as we've talked about before, I really enjoy that soccer, at least like Major League Soccer, they haven't gone down that road yet. That you have had some clubs have to, as we talked about with Chivas, like they go away for a little bit, they come back as a different club. You have some rebranding happening, but you don't just have like, oh, no, they don't have a team anymore. Oh, no, the Minneapolis Lakers are now the LA Lakers. You don't have that. Because
of the difference between the San Jose situation, the Columbus Crew situation, if Crew were moved, it would, for me, be a watershed moment in Major League Soccer history where the league becomes an organization that is not protecting the interests of the fans. It would change the entire landscape of American soccer to me.
And I think when we had these conversations months ago, I was just kind of assuming that move was going to happen. That it felt like they had kind of maneuvered, the league and Precourt together or separately, had maneuvered to put themselves in a position where that move was going to go through. And now I feel like less and less it's going to happen. And I'm knocking on wood. I'm not trying to jinx anything.
There were meetings with the local business people, right?
But I think they
Precourt's also been very quiet.
I think that they have seen the writing on the wall about how this would go down. I think Major League Soccer, maybe most importantly, have seen that people across the league are not having it. I mean, I have a Save the Crew sticker on my phone.
Yeah, you
Thanks,
do.
Renee. But like it is not an issue.
I have one in my pocket somewhere. Thanks, Renee.
It's not an issue that I would have felt that strongly about, I think. But knowing how it was kind of conducted has made me angrier. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, if the Nationals moved, I would be bummed. But, like, the Nationals were the Expos, I think, is how they became the Nationals. Like,
are they baseballers?
Yeah, like, you get that. You get that movement in every other franchise. Yes, they're baseball-y. So it's not as surprising. But right now it feels like it's a battle worth fighting because it's a battle that you can win, I think.
To arms!
Hooray!
Hashtag Save the Crew.
And such.
Final question today comes from President John... Oh, no, sorry, it's not that one. John Adams. Comes from John Adams. This question actually came in just an hour or two before recording, but it was so good, I wanted to sneak it into today's show.
And you've done the research on it, right?
Yeah, I went and did the research, and I'm going to invite you to guess, because it's a pretty tough question. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
On a recent show, Taylor said the phrase, bedding in Alexis Sanchez. I'm going to assume that this is maybe after the Sevilla game review. Or maybe after a Man United game review.
Or maybe it was probably something like he needs time to bed in.
Okay,
like because he just looked maybe like he didn't blend. That hasn't gone away, so the bedding in process hasn't worked so far.
So Taylor said the phrase bedding in Alexis Sanchez. This seems to be a phrase commonly used in soccer when a team gets a new player and they're integrating them into the team, often referred to as the bedding in period. Where the heck did this phrase come from? I did not edit that. That is John's phrase. It seems to have connotations to a new marriage, which makes its use in sport even more strange. It's an odd phrase for use in sport, and I'd like to know more about its origin, if possible.
Okay.
Have at it, Taylor.
So you've done the research.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions to help shape this before I go down a road that I will...
That's not how we do things, but okay.
I'm assuming it actually does relate to actual bedding or the substance upon which you sleep.
You want to say yes or no?
Yes.
It actually does not.
It does not?
No.
Okay, then I have no idea. Because I was going to say maybe it's like when you, like in the olden days when you would get like a new mattress stuff with straw. Why not? You have to get used to it. So then my question is, does it involve the person you're sleeping with?
It does not.
Then I have no idea.
It does not involve sleep at all.
Okay, then what is it?
Horticulture.
Okay.
So...
Doy. Gotcha.
Yep. So I didn't know this. I had to research this and find it out because I'm very bad at any gardening type thing. There is a thing where bedding for plants is where you sort of take a flower or a plant that's sort of ready to bloom or like it's ready to go, and you take it from where it is and you bed it into new soil. And that's how you kind of create a nice display of colourful flowers. Is rather than like planting the seed and then waiting for it all to happen, you sort of can grow them individually, then you bed them all together. But it's called the bedding when you put it in there. And there's a bedding period where it's sort of like everything gets settled.
Got to take root. You got to make sure it gets enough water so it doesn't die out.
Exactly. So I can't find any evidence that someone once used that as a phrase for soccer, but now that I know that that's the phrase for bedding plants, that's got to be where it comes from, right?
Yeah. I'm confused. What do you mean you couldn't find a phrase?
There's not like a Jonathan Wilson article where he says, this is why we say bedding in. It's because in 1875, there was a horticulturist who wrote for The Guardian, who was then assigned to cover a soccer match.
Yeah. And I'll say this.
He only used his horticultural phrases.
It was not even a phrase that I was aware that I said. And that sometimes happens, I would say, partially because I watch a lot of English soccer and some English programming, and also because I do a show with you. We've talked about this before. Occasionally, the way you pronounce things, I hear them from you before I see them written out. Yeah. And so I assume that's how it's pronounced. And so there will be moments. There was one of those the other day with like, Vitesse, what's the...
Arnhem?
Yeah, it might be Arnhem. I'm not sure, but I was thinking about it yesterday.
There's no I in it, right? It's Arnhem.
Is it? Okay.
I think so.
But I think in Band of Brothers, I've heard it referred to as Arnhem. And so I was like, is that the American way of saying it? And I'm pronouncing it the British way? So there are those moments where I'm wondering if you've just rubbed off on me and I say things like bedding in.
That could be it. The other thing is
or Martinez.
I've definitely said bedding in the past.
Yep.
And I've realised it's one of those phrases that I say without knowing the meaning of the word.
Yep.
And when I was an editor, that was a thing that would drive me crazy. I used to feel like you should not use these phrases unless you actually know how you're using it. Like it shouldn't just be like
but sometimes you can't know. Sometimes you don't know the idiom.
But it's just a stock phrase that you use that you don't really know. You don't know like what the analogy is or what it's referring to. Then you might not be using it correctly.
No, you know but you can get it from common usage, right?
Yes.
All I mean to say is that like there are lots of as I recall.
But that means you haven't thought carefully about each word. Right, and I'm criticising myself here because I've been saying bedding in and only realised 2 hours ago that it refers to horticulture.
We're going off on a different tangent here, but I'm fine with it because I would say like there are many possible explanations for don't throw the baby out with the bathwater or it's raining cats and dogs. There are different theories on it as I understand it. So then what if I'm using it wrong according to you, but according to what I've read, it's right? See? This is the tricky thing with idioms.
Well, the baby bathwater thing is quite obvious to make sense of why that works how it does, right? Raining cats and dogs is a bit more...
Do you know where don't throw the baby out with the bathwater comes from?
I don't know where it comes from, but I know...
can tell you where it comes from.
But I know what I'm saying when I say it, right? I understand the value of if you want to get rid of the bathwater, that's a good idea, but make sure you don't throw the baby out because the baby's valuable. You know what I'm saying?
Now I want to tell you where it comes from.
Okay, so what we've got to is you just want to tell me where it comes from.
Kind of, a little bit. No, it's fine.
But do you understand that
we'll hype it and then we'll leave it alone.
That I understand how that baby bathwater things work. I did not understand how bedding in works.
Okay.
And so I'm guilty of like using that phrase without knowing why it is bedding in.
All right, I'm with you on that one. It would be weird. It would be weird if it was like some horrific thing and then we were just like used it commonly. There are a few of those.
Well, tell me about cats and dogs. Do you know what
raining cats and dogs? It used to it had something to do with like cats falling off the roof, I think, like that, or something. It was like with thatched roofs or something like that.
Rain cats.
It's something like that. I can't remember. It was one of those quick articles.
Because they would get knocked off the roof by the heavy rain.
Maybe
so it's raining cats.
Something like that. Yeah,
we should do a whole separate etymology show.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Someone right now is screaming "stick to soccer."
Probably.
Yeah.
The baby bathwater one is a little bit more clear because it's basically just, I think it was like in olden times, families bathed by like hierarchy. So it was like the husband bathed first. I think then it was like because it was the olden days, it was like husband, then male heir, then all the way down, then like mother, and then so the baby was the last one to get bathed.
So you give the most vulnerable person in the family
the dirtiest water. And so the idea being that the water was so dirty, you couldn't even tell that the baby was in there. So you'd throw out the dirty water and the baby might be in the water.
Lovely, thank you.
There you go.
Right, well, thank you to John for that question and a brief detour into etymology.
It's what we do.
It is what we do.
Because we are nerds.
Apparently.
Looking mostly at myself when I say that.
All right, we also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 scouting reports. I'm bad at counting.
I love when you get committed to something and you instantly regret it.
I see it through.
But I'm here now.
I absolutely see it through. I think it's mostly young Americans in the scouting network today.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it's all people who were born in the United States or has some connection to the United States.
It's going to start with a hyphen and then get fully American.
It is.
How about that?
Well, yeah. Ben Richards scouting Efrain Alvarez, the 15-year-old Mexican midfielder for LA Galaxy 2.
Los Dos.
Yep. Efrain Alvarez was selected to train with the Mexican U17s and has been training with the Galaxy senior team in preseason, even making a substitute appearance in their 3-1 loss to RSL. Not bad for a 15-year-old. It is doubtful he sees any time on the pitch in this Major League Soccer season, but it's still a sign of how highly the organization rates him.
So this concerns me. This makes me feel more nationalist than I want to be. I'm sort of not concerned whether Efrain Alvarez gets minutes for LA Galaxy this year, now that he's not a US national team player.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of what happens.
It feels like when I say hashtag play your kids, I don't want to mean it, but I mostly mean play your American kids.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Yeah, you and Travis are going to be doing you're going to be drafting your players to fill out your young MLS 11, right?
Yes.
I'm curious to see how many non-US national team players feature on those lists.
Saying that, I might change my mind if I see a bunch of Efrain Alvarez and he's sort of a pleasure to watch. Then I'll be more interested in seeing this young guy tear up Major League Soccer, especially if there's a glimmer of hope that maybe he can switch back to the United States.
I'm going to call that the Chucky effect.
The Chucky effect.
Yeah,
Chucky Lozano.
Yep. Yeah, that's what happened with us. We both were sort of but then we watched him play and we're like, okay, he's fine.
That's
he's
fun
fine.
To
Okay. Do things, Chucky.
Go on, Chucky. Mike Spinelli is scouting George Bello, the 16-year-old American left-back for Atlanta United. The American Maldini. Mike says that George Bello has been on a great run of form in the Generation Adidas Cup qualifying. He helped Atlanta's U17s finish top of the East. He had a goal in the team's 7-0 drubbing of the Revolution U17s, followed by a goal and 2 assists in the 4-1 defeat of Red Bulls under-17s. Again, he's a left-back. And
I kind of forgot
those
about
are the
that.
numbers he's putting up. Bello has established a prolific partnership with left winger Deedson Vixamar. We need to add him to the scouting network, who scored off both of Bello's assists against Red Bull New York and assisted Bello in both matches. Final note, Vixamar should probably be in the scouting network, if only because of his awesome name.
The only way that could have been better is if you'd said, I love that name, we should put him in the scouting network. But we've kept the streak alive, and I'm very happy about it. Well done, Daryl.
Right.
Elijah Bates.
Remember the name, George Bello.
You should. We'll probably talk more about him. Elijah Bates, scouting Zion Jones, Z-Y-E-N. I'm assuming it's Zion, not Zion.
Yeah.
17-year-old American attacker for Atlanta United, soon to be Schalke. After a successful trial with Schalke, they announced that Zion will be joining the club when he turns 18 on, I believe, August 25th is what happens his birthday. Mm-hmm. It's unknown if he will stay with the club's academy for a period of time, like Nick Tatagui, or get a loan to a smaller club in, say, the Bundesliga 2, like Haji Wright.
Okay, but interesting is what does Zion Jones do in the meantime? Because he's with the Atlanta United Academy. Mm-hmm. Can't sign till August, which is, a few months away. So does he go and sort of just train with Schalke's U19s?
I would assume so, because...
Or does he just hang out in Atlanta and wait?
Unless Atlanta United want that street cred, like we had a kid go sign for Schalke, there is that idea of, all right, you're going to go sign for somebody else. Is this the lame duck soccer window? What is this?
It depends how they treat him, right? Are they you're still one of us and, maybe still play for our teams? I'm not sure. It's interesting. But it's definitely a kid who has looked at the MLS system and sort of gone, Europe. Yeah.
Pretty much.
All right. So Zion Jones, that's a name to watch.
One young American who has not done that comes next.
Mason Kriz scouting Marco Farfan, the 19-year-old American left-back for the Portland Timbers. Farfan played the first half of the Timbers' 4-1 win over Red Bull New York 2. He played well, kept a clean sheet for the first half, subbed off at half-time for Vitas. Could mean one of two things. One, the left-back position is still wide open, and Savarese, the new coach, is trying to give them both equal playing time, till he makes a decision. Or two, Farfan has actually won the spot, but was taken off because he cramped up towards the end of the second half. Mason says the second option is likely wishful thinking. That said, New York's only goal was an own goal by Vitas, not Farfan. So Mason says, quote, I feel bad actively cheering for Vitas to not do well, but for obvious reasons, I'd rather see Farfan start, unquote. As we find out the first game of the season, right, we'll see if it's Vitas or if it's Farfan at left back.
Indeed. That's a good point. Ed Ritter scouting Ben Mines, the 17-year-old American striker for the New York Red Bulls.
And DeMarcus Beasley's nightmares.
Also that. Ben Mines started as one of the 2 strikers in a Red Bulls 2 team that once again consisted of reserves, trialists, and academy players. He got several looks at goal in his 45 minutes, but failed to score in that aforementioned 4-1 loss. The second team will have one more game during the Mobile Mini Cup, and it looks like Ben will continue to get minutes there.
He looks really impressive every time I see him. He looks really scary and dangerous.
That said, I think we still probably end up seeing him in USL, maybe at City Stadium in Richmond.
But that's fine, right? We can watch him play for Red Bulls 2 for a year if he's only 17. Yeah. Cody Levine is scouting Kyle Scott, the 20-year-old American midfielder at Chelsea. As previously mentioned, Kyle made his debut for Chelsea in the FA Cup. Kyle Scott has been with the club since he was 10, so it was a big day, which might explain some of his shaky play. One thing to keep an eye on, Scott has played with the England U16s, the Republic of Ireland U17s, the US at U18 and U20 level, and is also eligible to play for Italy. So it may be wise for the US to cap-tie this kid sooner rather than later.
I think me just listing him as an American in the scouting report description, that's enough.
It's a fish.
That's all it takes, yeah. Once you've got it, because we never did that with anybody else. And that's where I'm going to leave it.
We should stamp it now.
Michael Hartman scouting Josh Sargent, the 18-year-old American forward for Werder Bremen. Josh turned 18 on February 20th and signed his first pro contract. It's reported he'll be playing with the Bremen U23s, although there are rumors that he won't be able to appear in any games until next season.
We shall see.
I've also heard he's working on German citizenship and might play for Germany.
Get out of it.
I just want
You're joking, right?
I am definitely joking.
Taylor, don't even. Alex Forbes is scouting Reggie Cannon, the 19-year-old American right back for FC Dallas. Alex says that Reggie Cannon played the full 90 minutes in FC Dallas' 1-0 road defeat to Toro FC in the first leg of the CONCACAF Champions League round of 16. He put in a solid defensive effort, logged multiple dangerous crosses that Urruti, Diaz and Barrios were unable to put away, a common theme of the night. I guess Alex has Gala vision or a working Go 90 stream. A small minority might place a portion of the blame on Reggie for the goal conceded, as it was his man that reacted quicker to tap the ball over the line, but I would argue that Hedges giving up a header at the near post on a corner kick and Gonzalez, that's the keeper, Jesse Gonzalez, failing to control said header was more to blame. I haven't seen this goal. I should have seen this goal before this game report.
You're forgiven, though. You're forgiven, as is Reggie for any involvement he may have had. Ted Tracy scouting Rubio Rubin, 21-year-old American forward for Club Tijuana.
I forgot he'd gone there, yes.
Rubio made his first appearance for Los Cholos, coming on as a left winger in the 55th minute of their CONCACAF Champions League match against CD Motagua. He didn't get on the score sheet, but he showed well, looked lively, made smart runs, and caused problems for the Motagua defenders. He did earn a yellow for embellishment, but Ted says it looked like a foul to him. I love that 3 of the last 4 scouting reports have all been okay, I'm slightly biased, but...
But the ref was against
it.
Stephen Kovac is scouting Jordan Sebachou, the 21-year-old French-American striker for Stade de Reims. Thiessen Jordan Sebachou has been a consistent starter in Ligue 2 this season. Thank you, Charlie Sheen.
Lovely.
Scoring 13 goals thus far. Reims seems likely to earn promotion as they're currently 14 points clear at the top of the table. They're doing better than Wolves.
They sure are.
Sebachou previously played for the French U21 national team, but remains eligible and interested in the US national team.
There we are.
Stephen, please keep us updated the more Sebachou scores.
So thank you to Stephen, Ted, Alex, Michael, Cody, Ed, Mason, Elijah, Mike, and Ben.
Yay.
I stole it from you.
If you'd like to join the Total Soccer Show Scout Network, you'll be supporting our efforts here at the Total Soccer Show. It's totalsoccershow.com/join. If you've already joined and you're waiting for a player, what do you do, Taylor?
You email Daryl at totalsoccershow.com with the subject line Itchy Feet, or put Itchy Feet somewhere in there. He'll assign you a player just as soon as his little fingers can type.
I've also loosened up a bit. I've started accepting other subject lines.
Yeah, that's good. That's good of you.
Yeah.
Question for you before we go. You famously, according to me, managed to write all over yourself in the course of recording. What have you done to yourself today?
I think the pen is leaking. So now I've just got one ink. I look like I've been fingerprinted at the police
station.
Too.
Yeah. 3 of Daryl's digits on his right hand are just covered in ink.
I look like I've been processed.
A little bit. I was concerned that maybe you had been fingerprinted before I came in.
Well, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Thank you. Listeners, thank you for listening.
That pause implied that things were continuing. I was just waiting.
Tomorrow's show, if all goes to plan, will be an interview with Bobby Warshaw. We're going to talk Major League Soccer 2018 and some things to look out for. As ever, when we talk to Bobby, things get interesting. So check out the interview with Bobby Warshaw tomorrow. Until then, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon. You gotta slice it.